It is the first show of 2023, and we have a guest on that we have been quoting since episode 1. We finally have her in studio, so stay tuned for our interview with Heather Greene on this episode of Texas Whiskey. Hey, I was anticipating Nico's like smart aleck quip on my well-crafted intro.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Do y'all be real? Do y'all do the be real?
Are we doing be?
This is super meta.
Okay.
I'm literally doing my be real in the middle of.
For those of you that listen and don't watch the show either on the Vocal app or on YouTube, Nico has now become a filmmaker. You doing B-roll in the middle of the show?
No, be real. It's
be
this
real.
app.
You have to like click your photo as you are in that moment.
At the moment, like
right?
it sends out a signal.
You can't look pretty.
Okay.
Or maybe you.
Or
look
you just
amazing.
need to always look pretty.
Or maybe you're on vacation and gonna scoreboard everybody.
Be real.
Mm-hmm. You know, yeah.
I learned something new. 2023 is the year of be real now.
Be real, yeah.
Chat GPT and be real are my two things that I've now learned about in 2023.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's no longer planning to look good for your Instagram or TikTok. It's like you got to take it right at that moment and whatever it is you look like.
Yeah.
Somebody then has to just do one when they wake up every day. Like that's got to be the bit.
Well,
like
no. It's literally sent out. A signal is sent out.
Oh, so, you don't get to pick.
No.
You
It's
don't
like,
get to
yo,
pick.
time to be
it
real.
Tells you. Someone just told you to. Oh, I guess I didn't fully realize that.
Interesting.
It sends you a signal, and in theory, and I believe it sends it to all of the users at the same time, because I can't see anybody else's be real unless I do one, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it's. And
I have just thought of so many scenarios of pictures I would not want to see. There's got to be a lot.
I mean, you don't have to take a picture.
There's a lot of people in the bathroom. Like right now, there was somebody like hungover from last night.
There's a lot of people in your bathroom.
No. I'm just saying, if you could see other people's.
It is 10. It's not even 10 a.m. and Jimmy's got a party in the bathroom.
Yeah, I have.
He's like, what?
And we are off and running on 2023.
Have we talked about whiskey?
No, but it's a good segue.
Here we go.
Because we're not here.
Oh, for those
I
of you,
can be real. I'm not here to look good. I'm here to build a beautiful whiskey company.
And you have. And so we're gonna.
Frankly, to be real.
To be
real.
real.
To be real today. Let's be real.
Okay, so we're gonna reset real quick. We're off and running in 2023, and I'm so glad that you're here. If you had any clue how often we have referenced you on this show in 2 years,
I'm really flattered.
Yes,
I
feel like I know you,
that.
and I'm literally just meeting you right now, and I'm like, oh, we're friends. Like so.
Okay, cool. I'm down with that.
Now, here's what makes me excited. So as I'm going through your bio, the things on Heather's bio says that she has been featured on, take notes at home, CNBC, CBS This Morning, Bloomberg, Fox, the Food Network, MSNBC. But congratulations that now your resume is fully legit now that you've been a guest.
On Vocal. On Vocal. Dun, dun, dun. Vocal. Do they have a... Okay.
Yeah.
No, so we're very thrilled, and
Thank you.
Let's back up just a little bit. When Nico and I started the show, I can't believe we're going on 2 years now, right?
It's crazy.
And
Nico
came to me. It was
run.
kind of about the time his book was coming out, and our very first episode was this idea of let's identify what is Texas whiskey.
Oh my God, my favorite topic.
I know, and we'll get to your bio. I feel like we're jumping in the middle of this conversation, but
fine.
while we're here,
Literally, we started with Be Real.
Do you remember? I know, and do you remember the conversation y'all had that you referenced in that very first episode?
I'm going to assume that it was something along the lines of Heather presenting a scenario where I grow corn in my backyard and I take that corn and I harvest it and I put it in a truck and I drive it to Oklahoma to my friend who has a distillery who distills it, puts it in a container. I drive it back to my house. I stick it in an oak barrel, and 4 years later, is that Texas whiskey?
Yes.
Which is my favorite scenario in all of this conversation because the answer is
well,
maybe.
Right. Okay, we're getting really deep here already.
Yeah, we start with the deep stuff and we'll get because we drink during the show, we try to hit the deep stuff early and then we can hit the fluffy stuff and just like
your listeners are like, "Oh my God, we're going into TTB regulations, category definitions."
Yeah. I think it's more just the concept.
I think the concept is really interesting. I think that Well, in order, it would be a Texan bourbon, right? Because it was put into a barrel in Texas.
Right.
But
are people going to be butthurt that you distilled it somewhere else?
Yeah, a lot. It's really interesting. It's like at the end of the day, I'm here to make really great whiskey and great American whiskey, and these state by state, I don't know, arguments and nitpicking and dancing on the head of a pin about like all these little interesting TTB and labeling regs, which are meant to protect the consumer and what's in the bottle. So that's good.
Yeah.
But then you've got the whiskey police, which I call them, those bloggers and all that are just like constantly monitoring the how brands are talking about themselves on a bottle. And it's like sometimes it's it is really confusing, especially for a craft brand. It gets really confusing. I mean, I know that one of my products, like we went back and forth with the TTB many times because I think they just were like, wait, what should this be called exactly? What are we doing? And things like that inside. So it's like is it a Texas what's a Texas whiskey is really what it comes down to. And that's a lot of that is there's the TTB, what the TTB would call it. And then there's culturally what you might call it and economically what you might call it. I mean, meaning like I have a business in Texas. I have 30 employees in Texas. We are, our founders are all, the whole thing is Texas.
Right.
But what if I brought a Kentucky whiskey and I'm no longer a Texan whiskey,
right?
So, or sourcing. So, it's really about how we define it or how you define it. I think as long as you try or you are as authentic and transparent and honest as possible and open about how you make your whiskey, I mean, that's really paramount, as well as having a good product in a bottle.
And I feel like that's what we continue to circle back around with the show is as long as you're just open, honest, and transparent, cool. Like there's room for a little bit of all of it, right?
It makes me happy
so.
that blended is no longer a bad word. It makes and sourced is no longer a bad word.
I am so happy about that. I've been, so every once in a while this concept of sourced or especially that we can just sit there for a minute. Since I've been in whiskey, it's almost 20 years now that I've been working in this industry.
That's awesome.
It's like the word sourced it comes and it goes and it comes and it goes. And then there's arguments it seems like there's a new crop of writers or a new crop of whiskey fans that every 3 or 4 years it comes up and people talk about it. Is it bad? Is it good? Settle it. It's kind of, for a little while, people are like, I don't care, 2 years, and then boom, people get into whiskey and then they're like, start talking about it again and then it's down and then it's up. And we've seen the cycle. So we've been talking about it. I know that the beginning of talking about sourced whiskey, where I really think that it became a big deal. And let me explain for the listeners. Sourced whiskey is essentially when somebody decides to put whiskey in a bottle. If you don't distill it yourself and you bring it in from another distiller, that would be called a sourced whiskey. In Scotland, I worked at the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society tasting panel, and we would taste casks to decide which one of these casks were great enough for international distribution, and we would put it in a bottle. And these casks would come from all sorts of distilleries in Scotland. They call it independent bottling there. Here we source it. It can be bulk. So that could be an argument like, well, independent bottling is different because this is bulk and this is not. But also there's, choosing bulk whiskey isn't that easy either, for some people. So, how do you know it's a good bulk? How do you know you're getting a right price? Do you have relationships to get the good stuff? There's a lot into it. And so sourcing really became a huge issue. It was really a marketing mistake that a few brands made early on by hiding the fact that they were doing it and calling it distillation in their distillery. And instead, it could have been like, we're sourcing from the best whiskey makers and we're going to do something to it to create it our own and then be honest about it. But they didn't do that early on and they hid it. And then in 2014 or so, the Washington Post, Eric Felton came out with a article that said your craft whiskey is made by... What was it? Your craft whiskey is made by... I can't remember what the title was. And it was just like, that's it. Everybody felt deceived. And so it was an advertising, a marketing mistake. And I've written about this. I don't remember where, but it was a marketing mistake more than it was a process mistake. And that's where we ended up on this road where sourcing is bad. Because if you started out right away saying sourcing is historical and that's kind of how things are done, trading and moving barrels around,
right,
we might not be here having that discussion.
So when that article came out, you think the public felt like they were being deceived because they thought they were drinking something that was misrepresented?
Well, they were misrepresented early on. You know, there were brands that would say this was my grandpa's recipe, and it made you feel like they made it, right? Instead of saying like, hey, this is grandpa's recipe. Until I get my distillery up and running, we're going to do it here. You know, there's ways, or we're getting some whiskey from the greatest places, and I think brands have learned that. Yeah, now many craft brands have learned that.
It's amazing to me to see, like, to be active on the whiskey groups or whatever, and to see this has happened within like 2 years of, I feel like at the beginning of the pandemic, if somebody was to post a bottle, there would inevitably be people going, oh man, that's just MGP. Like, oh, you know, they're just sourcing that, blah, blah, blah. And now somebody would post the same bottle and they're like, man, that's MGP. Like, no, that's great. Like, I'll drink anything that's 8-year-old MGP.
Which is funny because since we've started the show, I find the term MGP, to be honest, so Nico and I started the show, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I wanted to come into the show to be expert. Let me just ask the questions for the common man or the people that like, I know I'd like to drink this, but I want to learn more about it. And when I was learning what is sourcing and all these things, you were absolutely right. The term MGP would come up and it would be like a burger connoisseur going, oh, they got this stuff from McDonald's or, you know, whatever. It was like this, it came across as cheap, not quality. That's what this, and you're right. It has changed.
Well, do all your listeners know what they know what MGP is? It's a bulk
Let's reboot
producer.
Just in case for 2023. Go ahead.
It's a producer and they make whiskey. They're based in Indiana, and they have made and continue to make whiskey for a lot of people behind the scenes. So one of the things that I like to say is not what or did you use MGP or did you do this? It's how do you do it? How do you make your whiskey?
Right.
So it's not a what and then discard it. It's like, what are you doing to it to make it your own? How are you creating something unique in the market? Is it a good price point? And it always comes back to, is it a good price point and does it taste good? So in my dealings with consumers, not the whiskey geeks or people within the industry, but dealing with thousands and thousands of consumers when I was working at, or over years and working behind bars, collecting whiskey, opening whiskey schools, things like that. Consumers at the end of the day will look primarily for price point and deliciousness, right? First, because no one has that much time to dig deep, you know? So like I said, like we end up going round and round circles, things like that. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's just got to be good whiskey in a bottle. And it's got to be, you should be open and authentic. And we put everything on our labels. So we use MGP.
Yeah. Hey. Well, I think the other thing that
I
distill.
I want to be clear. I want to be also clear that we also distill. So one of the distillery. Yes, I think that distilling is obviously we need to distill. So
I've hung out with Marlene. I've seen the still. They distill a lot of whiskey.
Well, and I think initially when I was introduced to this idea of when MGP would come up, it was this image of one giant barrel that was just the same thing going to everybody with different labels.
Actually,
and
it isn't.
Right, you know, I know it isn't, but like that's, I guess, initially when I was introduced to the idea of like this giant swimming pool of the same whiskey.
Your cartoon brain turned it into one barrel.
Yes, I turned it into one.
Like, how much garbage do you need, sir?
Just coming off of one little still. And you're right, that isn't the case, but that was the very first time that this concept came up. It was like, so this is the exact same stuff in all these other bottles. My novice whiskey brain 2 years ago, and I was like, oh, okay. Just because it came from there doesn't mean it's the same liquid also. So
yeah, I mean, exactly. So our MGP, we use MGP it's a good segue for our port finished rye, which actually is an award-winning rye. And how we use MGP. So when it comes, our whiskey is from Indiana. That's the rye from there. And
hey, good segue to pour.
Yeah.
Hey, look, we can have whiskey now. I was going to work one in.
I saw you trying to get there, so I appreciate it.
I am super proud of this whiskey. I love this whiskey.
Port finished rye.
I freaking love this whiskey. So I'm not going to make rye at our distillery. Rye is a pain in the What can we swear on this
Do you need another one?
podcast? And what rye is a pain to make, okay? And to do it well, like I said, you're at the Let me back up a little bit. My philosophy on whiskey, let's just get comfortable. My philosophy.
Now that we poured some whiskey, let's get comfortable and get real.
Time to chat.
My philosophy on whiskey, when we decided to, when I came on board and I wanted to scale and make a really nice, big legacy whiskey brand, and I wanted to make great whiskey, put it in a bottle. As I said, I went from the consumer's mind backwards. Okay. So it's like, what makes a great whiskey? What makes something that people want to return to again and again? Now, it's one thing to create something novel or experimental or not really know what the terroir in your warehouse is doing, or there's a lot of things. Taking a blueprint, for example, and then creating a distillery based on the blueprint of Kentucky or Tennessee whiskey. This is what happens, I think, with craft brands or did. And then cross your fingers and hope for the best in a couple years is really tough. It's hard to do that. Mm-hmm. You're basically at the mercy of terroir, lots of things. How your financing as a craft distiller, the temperature, terroir meaning temperature primarily, because in different places of the U.S. we're actually seeing quite different, variants of temperature, and we can get into that. Humidity levels, of course, affect how your whiskey ages. You're looking at that. You're looking at expertise behind the still. You're looking at expertise in warehousing, expertise in casking. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not just like, hey, here's a blueprint, let's do it and hope it tastes good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that was what the shock was early on for a lot of craft distillers. And I'd seen it over and over again, right? So we know pretty much what a 53-gallon barrel in Kentucky or Tennessee, or your single malt scotch made with 100% malted barley in Scotland over time. Like, these guys have been doing it for hundreds of years and passed through generations. We kind of know, look, it's going to be, and by that, okay, I can already hear like, oh, there's a lot of difference in Kentucky. Yeah, I get it. But your Kentucky whiskey is not going to taste like scotch. Right. Or I'm talking not, or we're talking like variances, little levels of differences, right? It's not going to end up tasting like if I put whiskey in a 5-gallon or a 30-gallon barrel in Texas, okay? Mm-hmm. So your Kentucky whiskeys in Tennessee, we know pretty much. We've got the data, right? We've got the data of Scotland. We've got the data of Japan, who's been doing it since about 1920. We know. So, when we are experimenting, we didn't really know what that would do. And we're seeing now, this goes into Texan whiskey, we're seeing now, oh, okay, this isn't, over time we're seeing in different parts and pockets of the United States. Mm-hmm. Oh, it didn't, I see, it's not quite that way. That's not really, that's not happening. So I like the use of what the terroir of Texas is doing on our whiskey, and I like the grain to glass and distilling. I need that as a component. I like to create it. Marlene Holmes, we create it. Our team creates that. I shouldn't say me, because they're the ones there every day. Mm-hmm. And then use that with great Kentucky or Tennessee whiskeys, because people like that. So it's like going, what do the consumers want, and then backing it up, and how do you get there? And then how do you get there in a way where you create a moat around your brand to have its unique personality or style, right? Because you don't want to copy them. Right. You want to create, do what they do, but you still have to create brand identity and a house style, I call it.
What's your story? Sure, yeah.
Which is how I approached it. So you look at MGP Port Finished Rye, it's like, I love Balvenie Portwood 21. Mm-hmm. Okay. I just freaking love that product. And it inspired me. We all wanted to do port barrels. And one of my colleagues brought one from Portugal at the time, and we were experimenting. This is how this came to be. And I was like, not really sure how a rye in Texas would do with a port finish. And so we put, again, this goes to your MGP, comment about all the casks come in. They don't taste this exactly the same. Right. So the first thing we do is create consistency of flavor with those. And by the way you do that is obviously you create kind of an average. You're looking at your cask and you're going to create kind of an average consistent flavor over those casks. You're looking for that. So you can taste them and you can discard one that maybe you want to use for a single barrel is a little different. So you're looking at that. But in general, at a certain age point, they're at a certain age and a certain mostly age, and of course 95.5 rye 95% rye. That's what that means. And they're going to have pretty much your flavor that you know what it's going to be. So you take that in, you vat that. Vatting means, of course, pouring your whiskeys into a giant tank because we're not making a single barrel. So you do that first, and then we were like, okay, let's put it into some port barrels and see how that tastes. So we pour them in to first fill port barrels. First fill meaning it's the first time that it's being used after it was used for port.
Gotcha.
Okay, so you're going to hear when people talk about first fill, second fill, third fill, that's what they're talking about. You don't hear that as much in the United States because bourbon is only a one fill thing.
Yeah.
Once you use the barrel, you can't anymore. You do hear first, second, third fill talked about more in Scotland, European style whiskeys, Scotch and Irish and Japan. So because they can use things. How many times did you use
I've only heard it come up with single malt in America, honestly. Like
Correct,
the idea. Like the Balcones will do. Like, the Dust to Dawn that we went off on is the
first fill and the second time, right? Yep.
Blah, blah, blah.
First fill, second. Yep. So that's when you hear first fill, second fill. So we first fill port barrels. So now you're with me. Port barrels, rye, fatted rye. What do you call it? I'm using my hands a lot. The first fill port.
Yeah.
And when I worked in other countries on whiskey, consulting or working or just in general, all that kind of stuff, it's like you're going to have, especially where they do a lot of that originally, like Scotland, and using interesting casks in Japan, which I'd seen and loved. I love Japanese whiskey. And I was thinking, I don't know, 8 months, maybe 6 months, 9 months. No, I knew it was longer in certain places because they have a temperate climate, right? So it never gets too hot, never gets too cold. And so I was like, okay, maybe it's going to be like that. Marlene calls me like, I don't know. I want to say it was like a month later, barely 5 weeks. I wish I wrote this down. And she's like, we got to take this out of the barrels. I'm like, what? And she said, they're really porty. I mean, they're really like port tea, you know? Yeah. And so we went down and it was like, whoa.
What month? Though.
Well, this goes into the complications of port finished rye, which is why.
Well, like if it was the middle of the summer,
right? No, there's a difference between February and August.
Okay, well, this was like springish, like yeah. So you get where I'm going. So the first thing is then we had to do a second fill, third fill, and then vat all those for the consistency, and then over time we created that port finished rye. But the story is we didn't even have a vatting tank to empty it out, so they had to go and get one from a winery in Fredericksburg, a tank. We're like, shit, we gotta get this out of the barrel.
Yeah.
We gotta hurry. We're gonna wreck our.
Yeah,
our
where do we
whiskey.
put this? Right.
Yeah, so she was in charge of that. We put it in a vatting tank, and there it sat, the first fill, and then we did the second, and then we kind of until we got the right. The nice right flavor profile that
it wasn't dominated by
you don't want to dominate it. It's like a nice mellow sheen over it adds a nice layer, a beautiful layer of chocolate and figs and bramble.
How many fills?
Okay, so now
because
so by the 45th fill, we finally
because this thing started off with we got first fill port barrels.
Right.
This is gonna be awesome. How many fills?
Oh my god! Well, now we see. Well, what you say is exactly right. Now we have like these spreadsheets. It's like when was it filled? What time of year? Because now in the heated summer, it's like a whole different ball game. It is a nightmare to make a port finish.
Oh my God.
This rye is a nightmare in Texas. We got ours. But what happened was, let's just say it's a nightmare. We get all the vat. We have to vat first the MGP whiskeys. Then we have to put it in the port barrels first, second, and third. Then track those how many fills they are, and then track what time of year we're in because your first fill in the summer is going to be a small amount of time. Mm-hmm. Your first fill in winter longer. Mm-hmm. Your second fill in winter really long. You know, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's just really like, and then you vat it, and then you get, and it's like really kind of.
And then the consistency of all this has to be a nightmare as well, right? Yeah.
So I was really nervous about the consistency. Like I'm always nervous about that, and just like, is it going out? Is it going out? And last year I took a long needed vacation and I got a call from the ACSA, American Craft Spirits Association, and they said, hey, are you joining our award ceremony? And I was like, oh, I'm on vacation. They're like, you might want to listen in. And so I did. And that night we had won the first round, which is like best whiskey or best rye, and then we won best whiskey, and then we won best in show for the entire ACSA that year
That's
for
awesome.
the port finished rye. So so the consistency is great. What we created is great. Forbes magazine called it best whiskey in the world. We're really doing well with this.
Yeah.
I just love this rye. A lot of heart, a lot of energy goes into this rye, a lot of thinking, a lot of planning. So get your hands on it. You heard it
That's
here first,
awesome.
because someday this is tough to make.
It was worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a pain in the butt, but man, this
Goes back to
is
why
so
to do
good.
hard things, right? Because on
Right.
the other side of, and we actually have an interview with Marlene we haven't even put up yet, right? When we were down at the Texas Whiskey Festival,
Yeah.
we took a tour of your facility down there, which was great and beautiful. And in fact, on our channel trailer, there's us sitting in your tasting room. Nico giving me a hard time about saying that we were live and we're not live. But it was
Yeah.
the setup down there is great. And that room is beautiful. I was like, the good and the dangerous. I could sit in here and drink all day. I was like, this is a great vibe in here. It's beautiful.
Everyone says our vibe is good. It's
Yeah.
like, because we built everything kind of like in a different way, right? As I said, you build from like, what do the consumers want and back up. So it's like, is our whiskey going to be loved? You
Yeah.
know, before we go big, like, let's see, do people like what we do?
And I think that's so-
they do. So they come in and they like it. And so it's like, okay, now we can build this.
Right.
Now we can build this. Now we can build this. And what we have is this like cool little distillery with these little areas and rooms. And it's like a little, it's a little hill country.
Yeah,
you know?
it's fantastic. And I just think that's so smart. And when you said that, just from any business perspective, I think those of us that are so close to our product or our service, whatever we do, we think, oh, this is what the people need, or this is what I like the most. And so you start building something from that perspective, or the whiskey nerd builds it from, how nerdy can this juice be, instead of what does the consumer want? Starting
always
with
the
what
consumer.
they want and working backwards, because I think so many businesses build things with what the founders want or what the experts want or what the small minutia of the nerds
Correct.
inside the circle
Yeah.
want. And then you get it out to the public, and the public was like, well, this isn't what I wanted. This wasn't what I asked for.
It's heartbreaking, and I would see that
Yeah.
over and over again when I was working at the Flatiron Room in Manhattan, and we had, this is beginning of the renaissance of craft distilling or distilling in America, like 2012, 13, 14. And I would see that. I'd be like, oh, this brand, like, we got to try it. And we'd sell it to the consumers, and they'd come back in and they would be like, I'll take a maker's mark. They would go back, and I would see that. And it was like everybody wants to try. And I would see, you have one chance with a consumer. One.
Yeah.
Because switching costs in this business are so high.
Yeah.
Right. So I knew that from experience when I came on as CEO of Milam Greene and Whiskey Maker. It was like, we have one chance with a consumer. You nail it.
Yeah.
And if you aren't as good or better than what they're used to tasting, they will turn away, and good luck trying to get them to taste it, because then the next time, well, it's different now. Or here's a new one. I tried that. I didn't like it.
Do you feel like it's important to have, like, when you have your first opportunity with the consumer of whatever your flagship product is like once they're introduced, they're open to some more experimental type things, but it's about what's the gateway to you first?
Absolutely. It's like that's what that first taste with a consumer is just so important, and they will be willing once they understand who you are and they like your product. They'll be willing. Then more experimental and more fun, and you can see that with the big legacy brands, right? Like they've got their their core products, and then they can kind of have fun with it. But and it's just from experience. You just see that thousands and thousands of consumers you've talked to over and over again, or being a writer and seeing what the responses are and who are you making it for. Obviously I make it for myself. We're all whiskey drinkers, right? Marlene, Marsha, myself, Sharon, who you met, all of our team, we drink whiskey. We actually our people, our leadership team and our distiller team come from legacy brands.
Yeah.
Right? So they come from this tremendous experience to understand that as well. Studying the consumer is really important. And it's not that you just only make it for them. I have to like it too.
Sure.
Right? But it's got to be the consumer.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
You know?
it's human nature. Like it's in our animalistic nature to, if we like something, we go to it. If we don't like something, we go away from it. And it all just kind of depends on how you're presented, because heaven forbid a tequila drinker who's really, really, really into, I don't know, Casamigos or something very equally smooth. Their first introduction to scotch
Casamigos,
is
by the way.
Wee Beastie from Ardbeg. And that's what scotch is now.
Right.
That was very frustrating for me.
Right, exactly. But
I didn't like, because I'm like, no, Ardbeg has amazing products. Like, you know, but forget it.
Yeah, or
You have
like
one chance with
or back to the Texas whiskey thing, like
that's
right. Some of my least favorite Texas whiskey came out 7 years ago, and if all you had was Texas whiskey from 7 years ago, you might just now generically think that all Texas whiskey sucks.
Yeah.
Because you've categorized all of the things, like literally one shot. And so
I hear that when I travel, like, I don't like Texan whiskey. I don't want your Texan whiskey. I've been in different states where they say it, and you really have to, well, you just have to just try it, and then it's like, okay, you know. But it's exciting to make whiskey in Texas. It is a new frontier. It's awesome, and you get to play with the terroir. Look what this port finished rye did. I mean, it's amazing. And our triple cask, like, we have 3 different casks that we use in our triple cask, and one of those casks is what we distill in Blanco.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful and it's robust and what you want in your Texan whiskey. It's spicy and big and has a pop of flavor. And we use that I like to use it as a spice, right? In my blending. So you think about blending, it's like a big spice cabinet you open up, or like a mixologist with other ingredients, and you just put those casks together, and I love it. You just put it together and create something really nice. And we do that at a panel. It's not just me. I just want to say that I have an incredible, phenomenal team that is also, I don't just taste this and say, this is great. It has to be all done by all of us.
And it's one of the things that Nico has always said since the beginning of the show is one of the strengths of Texas whiskey is the fact that we weren't known for anything specific. It isn't Kentucky, like, well, this is the way we've been doing things for 200 years, and people aren't as open to experiment with things, and that it does open that up because it is this kind of new frontier. But going back to the opinion of Texas whiskey, how have you seen that change in your time, since you guys, so how long, Milam Greene, how long have you been on board there?
I've been here working since 2018.
Okay.
18, 19, 20, 21.
Have you seen
six years. I have to say, unfortunately, I haven't seen.
Really?
Yeah. Outside of Texas, it's still a rough road. It's still a rough road.
It's interesting because I hear all these awards and things, and I just always wonder whether it's you guys or we've had, Iron Root in here or other people that are winning big awards, and I'm just like, at some point, does the rest of the world realize they're doing some cool things in the state?
Internationally,
yeah,
you are. I do think. I think that. I don't know. Maybe it is better a little bit, but I still hear it a lot.
Yeah,
a lot. And you know what? I hear it a lot. I think I hear it mostly from Texans.
Really?
Texan retailers, Texan bar owners,
Totally
Texan bartenders.
I absolutely believe that.
We've talked about that too, about how you don't see in the bars in, like, just take Dallas-Fort Worth, for instance. I can think of the same 3 distilleries I only see here when I'm like, there's so many amazing things, and you don't see them in bars here in our backyard,
It's interesting. My friend, Tommy Tardy, who runs the Flatiron Room and Fine and Rare in Manhattan, like a big whiskey connoisseur, expert, bar, whatever, everything whiskey, he came down to visit me, and he was like, how come you're not in every bar here and restaurant? It's like, I don't know. It's weird. You don't see it. But it's because of that reputation. They need to be reintroduced to that. I do think. we are in a lot and we're growing, but it is surprising the lack of Texan whiskeys in Texan bars.
Yeah, I'm doing a tasting. I'm doing a Texas whiskey tasting at Lonesome Dove. Not to call them out.
Right.
Lonesome Dove.
About as Texas as it gets,
in
right?
the stockyards.
Right.
It's as Texas as you can get. We had to go in and do a special order because they had one whiskey that has a T and an X on the bottle, but's not from here, as their only Texas whiskey.
At Lonesome Dove.
Now, I've since had a lovely conversation with Adam, and I'm going to try to get a whole bunch of Texas whiskey in there. I'm like, bro, you need to be the place where you drink Texas whiskey in the stockyards. What is wrong with you? And he's like, you know what? That's a really good point. So maybe it'll change.
But the fact that never crossed their mind,
have to have that conversation with something like Lonesome Dove, which is as Texas as you can possibly get. Like, dude, it makes me a little frustrated, but I do think that it is changing. And I mean, if nothing else,
I think it is. I think it's changing more with people who've been here for a little while than it is for some of the new bar owners and retailers. I don't know about Lonesome Dove.
Yeah, I would agree.
But I haven't been there yet, actually.
Props to Lonesome Dove for being open to expanding their Texas whiskey collection.
I cannot wait to host all of you at our tasting of whiskey at Lonesome Dove in Fort Worth on Main Street.
Congratulations to Lonesome Dove. That's the largest whiskey collection of Texan whiskey.
Yeah, they will just set it up there.
Oh, did you mean our new lunch sponsor, Lonesome Dove? Okay.
Now I have to go. I don't know you, Lonesome Dove. Don't. This is not me.
It does make me, just the side note, Nico and I had played around with it. We always wondered, would a bar just called Texas Whiskey, but just Texas Whiskey have legs? And I said, I think it would.
Oh, well, I think in Austin, I mean, I'm in Austin now, but
whether it's here, Austin, here, I think,
people want the experience.
That's
so
right.
like when people travel, don't you want the experience? I mean, when you go somewhere, you're like, what's your local beer?
Yeah.
100%. They want that.
100%.
These travelers coming in from South by, ACL,
Absolutely.
all the businesses and the tech companies, they want that. I hear them in the bars saying that. What do you got local? What do you got? What's your local?
I'm glad you're going to invest in our Texas whiskey bar that will be located outside the Dallas Convention Center.
Yes. The crowdfunding will go up shortly.
In the middle of the stockyards.
Right. Whatever. Adjacent to Lonesome Dove.
Poor Lonesome Dove.
They got more commercial right now.
Kidding. Than Liquid Death is, and they're our official water sponsor. Thank you, Liquid Death. Okay, so I want to go here. Can I go here?
You can go wherever you want.
Because I told Sharon she didn't have to open this, and then she opened it. So I saw it open. I'm like, oh, I got to try this now.
Okay.
Now that this thing is open.
Tell us about this.
Heather, can you tell us about your new project called Unabridged by Milam Greene? How did this come about, and what is it?
Okay, so I'm very excited. This was our limited edition release. We released it a couple months ago, not too long ago. We did an online release drop in December. Unfortunately, I think a lot of it's sold out, but if you can find a bottle somewhere, you are in luck. Still, it is pretty, right?
Is this what they were about to release when we were down there and taking the tour and we were...
When were you there?
No.
There was something that was on the horizon.
That was May.
Yeah, but okay.
I don't know.
I digress.
Maybe
I knew there was something
our
about...
Distiller's edition we do in May, which is our 100% grain to glass out of our stills. This is unabridged.
Okay.
So we talked about the spice cabinet a minute ago. You look nice holding it up. Again, I'll put a still on.
Do you need a model for? Do you need a spokesperson? Because I'm totally for hire. Like this, I wore the brown suit just to match, so we went with this.
Oh my god, it does look good with your suit. It looks great with your suit.
I plan these things out.
Oh, Heather, this is lovely.
That looks good.
Thanks.
You know what?
We'll do a little photo shoot.
Oh my god, and the retro 1960s Mad Men whiskey glass. Let's count me in on that.
Come on, see?
Cut me in on
Thank you.
that.
You're the first person that appreciates my Mad Men whiskey glasses.
Of course, right away. The silver rim. These were I have them at home too. I have a whiskey collection.
I just made my new best friend on the show. Everybody else gives me a hard time about not being the Glencairn guy. I'm like, no.
What?
I need the Don Draper office glass.
Look, whiskey has to look good on you too.
Absolutely.
Can't just be all about that. It has to look good.
And from now on, Heather will be our guest every week. Nico just got bumped off his own show.
Y'all have fun. This is really good. See ya.
I can't wait just for this clip to take this is now an Instagram reel that will just play over and 100%. Over again.
When I saw you today and I was like, oh, I should have brought I didn't wear I would have worn I thought, relax, wear a t-shirt. There was the FAA grounded all the flights 2 days ago. Right. And then I was like running. I was like, oh crap, I got to drive to Dallas. It was like a mess. And I was like, oh, I'll wear a t-shirt.
Sure.
And then you show up like this. And I'm like, holy F.
What have I done?
Now I'm wearing a t-shirt.
I always feel like I'm usually just the outlier in this. I just feel like the overdressed guy most of the time.
You're the star. He's sorry. Look at that outfit and then like that.
Next time we negotiate my contract, Nika, remember,
I have never claimed to be the star. By the way, if you do want to hire him, he works for whiskey.
I do work for whiskey, though. Okay, let's back to this amazing bottle that I'm going to be modeling for you guys very soon.
I think these are from like the early 60s, maybe.
These are literally the actual
ones.
glasses from the show.
Oh.
I went that route. I was that nerdy.
So this is how I first heard of Heather. If you're not familiar with this book, Whiskey Distilled, this is my favorite explanation of all of the stuff. It's so incredibly approachable. It's so well written. It's absolutely delightful. There are quotes on the back from Anthony Bourdain and Eric Ripert and Nick Offerman, and like this book is absolutely magical. If you do not know this book, if you like whiskey, and especially if this is something that you're just starting to get into, by the end of this book, you will have such a wonderful point of reference on the whole thing. Awesome. And it's absolutely lovely. So with this, I know that I feel like this kind of is the segue into this.
Correct.
Okay.
I think so.
So
it's a great segue.
So as an author,
unabridged.
yes, absolutely, unabridged. So as an author, just sort of for the audience as kind of coming from that point of reference, how did this come about? Tell us about this project.
Sure. So I've been living in New York before I came here, New York City, in Jersey City, right outside New York, for many years. Actually, I don't know, for 25 years, most of my adult life.
Yeah.
And so I had other fellow whiskey writers based in New York. Look, before the pandemic, all of us, so many of us live there, the media capital. That's, if you want to be kind of in the mix of things in terms of media, like magazines, and you're writing for these publications, you're on. I mean, I was on these news programs like The Street or Bloomberg News because I'm like, hey, can you come up today? Like, it's just, we're all there at the time. And Noah Rothbaum and Dave Wondrich are fellow authors. Mm-hmm. I love their books. They're great friends of mine. They have been in the industry for ages as well. Oh, I shouldn't say that. For like... It just like makes it sound like.
Listen, Dave and Noah both know they old. It's cool. We're all right.
So we've been there a while, but I had an idea. So as I said, we're talking about this spice cabinet, and I just love blending and batching. I love taking different whiskeys and just making something beautiful with them. I don't think about the circle of the bourbon guys when I do that. You know, it's like, this is about what can I make that's beautiful and great? Because again, like if you start thinking about the criticisms of it, you can get tripped up on making stuff. Any creative endeavor, let's just say that. Like if you're creating something and at the same time thinking of your future critics, or you're inviting them to a tea party while you're trying to create it, it can't happen.
Right.
Like you have to just do it.
Right. Because the critics will always be there regardless of what you make.
100%.
Right.
Oh, I've had my, we could talk about, I've had my fair share of critics and trolls on internet. It's been there. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
That's how it all is. If you're out there, you're going to get it. So, I decided we just want to make this whiskey. We call it unabridged. Like it's the totality of everything. What do I have? What do we taste in the warehouse? All the different casks, all the different beautiful whiskeys that we can gather in one place and put them together. And meaning like unabridged is obviously, unedited, everything in there. Foolproof in this whiskey. And then the three of us did it, kind of celebrating the written word and our writing and our friendship for years. We always promised we'd help each other out. In fact, they always had a joke like, which one of us is actually going to do a brand, and so they were just so helpful and wonderful. And we put all these whiskeys samples together and we just went through blindly and picked this one. And it was really fun. And it showcased when we saw what the casks actually, the makeup of the casks were, because we did it blind, right? Okay. So I had my finance director and my distiller and my operations director and all them put all the casks together for me and don't tell me what it is. Okay, so we don't know what it is. All of them. And we look at the results, and it was very interesting because and this goes back to something that I've been kind of like on a soapbox about for a long time.
Right.
Is there's a lot of old whiskeys in here, but there's actually a lot of younger whiskeys too. And people forget that young whiskeys, if done well, right? So really well done young whiskeys have flavors that come out of the flavors that pop are from fermentation and mashing. So you're getting a lot of fruits, you're getting a lot of citrus, you're getting a lot of like that really beautiful ethereal notes, the lighter notes, right? the longer they're in cask, they're silenced. They become, they're the
Wood bomb.
yeah. And even just like, even if it's a good wood bomb, they start to disappear.
The wood starts to take over everything, and it kind of
it starts
mutes everything
to.
else.
And so, this is why I like, even in Scotch whiskeys, I love the 12-year-old Scotch whiskeys. Those were the youngest in Scotland. Like, what? You're drinking the 12? Why aren't you drinking 21 or 30? I'm like, I like the fruitiness and the lightness of the young. So when we looked at this bottle, it was like, what we loved about it before we knew what it was that it had those elements of like florals and fruits in it, but it had a nice back end of wood. And we looked and it, sure enough, it had younger whiskeys in it. Now, if I was just going to say, I need whiskey and, putting 2 or 3-year-old whiskey in there, oh my God, the critics would happen.
Of course.
Right? How can you sell a whiskey with 2 or 3? Why are you putting 2 or 3? Are you trying to scam? It's always like, you're trying to like do something like
everybody's thinking they're being taken advantage of, right? It's like,
well, I mean, maybe sometimes some whiskey makers are. I don't know. I can't speak to them, but it was like, for me, it was like, no, I really want to. I actually really like this whiskey, because it's always about what tastes good, and you want to think about what the consumer wants. But they also want that too. They want to feel like they're buying something scarce and of value.
Right.
So anyways, that's what happened. But there's a lot of old casks in there. It's all of the casks from 4 different states. And it's our, I forgot to tell you.
So you did the blend blind? So basically you had all of these and then
we had we just tasted. No, well, we took the best casks already.
Okay.
And then we did that. So we didn't go in like to thousands of thousands of them and go ahead and
okay,
just,
cool.
Taste them.
No, that's awesome.
We had to pre-select a few just because there's no way.
Oh yeah.
There's no way you could do that.
That's fantastic. So on the back you'll see that there's a 14-year Tennessee bourbon, 6-year Tennessee bourbon, 4-year Tennessee bourbon, 4-year Kentucky bourbon, 3.5-year Texas bourbon with malted rye, and a 2 1/3 year Kentucky bourbon with malted
That's that
rye.
honesty. We go down to the detail.
Right. That's to the month.
It's absolutely, again, just what we're talking about. This is absolutely what the consumer wants.
I love this whiskey. So
Yeah, it's so good.
I'm really excited about it. And also, I want to mention, so I forgot to tell you this. So we do distill in, we distill in Blanco on our 1,000-gallon pot still, which is a new one, a shiny new pot still. And we also distill in Kentucky. So Marlene is from Kentucky. So when we were thinking about how we produce and scale our whiskeys, it's like, well, why wouldn't she still work with the people that she knows and loves and the equipment she loves and create whiskey up there? So we do collaborate with Bardstown Bourbon Company. We actually have a contract with them as well.
Awesome.
She goes up there. She's up there again on April 4th. I was just up there in October. We were up pretty regularly, the two of us interchanging in our team. And we make our whiskey there, and we use malted rye. It was the first time they ever had done that. We wanted it because we were using it in Texas, and we really liked it. I think the malted rye is what gives the younger whiskey a little more depth.
Okay.
And also it's Texas, aging.
So let me ask you this to get real nerdy, to take my show back.
Yes, this is your corner. Go ahead.
So when was the first time you blended pot still and column? Because I'm assuming everything on this bottle that says Kentucky or Tennessee is from a column still, but yours is not.
We started from the day one.
Okay.
Day one.
That's
day one
awesome.
here.
I feel like this has come up as of late. Like there's some even like this edition of Grayson. It's the first time we've been blended pot still and column. So it's all been pot still before, but now we have a column in there, and it's.
Yeah, we were one of the first to just like do this style,
Cool.
like a blend. And
That's
when
fantastic.
I first got here, it was like, what are you doing? That's not Texan whiskey, or that's not legit, or what is she doing? Blend. I was like, but you know who's been doing it forever is I love the Japanese have been blending pot and column stilled whiskeys and different casks from warehouses up and down
100%.
Japan for a long time, and they make awesome whiskey.
And there's a massive that is the tradition in rum, which we're very close to all of the rum, and like this is something that we've done, but just it never really popped up in bourbon much.
You know, it's funny. I have a friend who was in whiskey. She's a distiller. She's in whiskey for a long time, and then she moved over to rum. And she said to me once, she's like, "Yeah, I was tired of being in whiskey. There were just so many of these narratives placed on us on what we could and couldn't do that weren't even historical or legal requirements."
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd get the shit kicked out of me from excuse my language.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
in trouble because it's like what you weren't supposed to do. She's like, it was just mean.
Right.
And I was like,
And no basis for it. It's just, yeah.
well, it was odd. I mean, I think things are friendlier and changing, but
Sure.
it was just like, yeah, you had to be tough. If you're going to make whiskey, you got to be tough.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of, I think if you're going to start a business, you're going to hear it, but but you're in the rodeo, you're playing the game, it's like, that's the important part of it. And you're making a good product, but you have to have a lot of grit. If you're going to come to Texas and you're going to do what you want to do, and you're going to still playing within the legal rules, but you're going to bust out of the narrative, the false narratives that have been placed over you. You have to have a lot of grit. You better be ready.
It makes me so happy that we're about to wrap up this interview and we haven't even talked about the fact that it's an all-woman crew.
It's literally where I was about to go.
Literally,
It's
that makes me so, because I feel like the last time that we had a long form interview, I was like, I literally said to you, I can't wait until I don't have to ask you about this, and this isn't like
it's boring.
part of the stupid.
We are
story.
46 minutes into the show, and we haven't talked about
mentioned
that.
the fact that
this
is it's amazing.
That's great. No, because you've mentioned that
amazing.
before when this has come up on the show. You're like, I'm excited for the day where
doesn't matter.
that doesn't matter.
It doesn't
It's
matter.
who's just making amazing.
It's about
whiskey.
making
Yeah.
a brilliant whiskey. This is absolutely lovely.
I love
fantastic.
that
It's
whiskey.
so good.
If I'm talking about women in whiskey, then I'm not talking about what I actually do.
Right.
And also, P.S., I'm a male expert in whiskey. They're the ones who are actually, it's still about 78%. I know more about men drinking whiskey than women.
Absolutely.
Because that's still the most of your customers, right? Yeah.
Pretty much
Absolutely.
still. It still is. It still is. But it is funny. I'm like, I know more about the guys and the questions they ask than I do about the women, because it's like,
They're easy.
they're easy.
Right.
They're easy.
If they're talking to you, they're
like, okay,
interested.
cool, man.
Yeah.
They're like, all right. They're more open,
Yeah.
usually. But
Yeah, absolutely.
it's kind of funny. I've been to, I talk about that in the book, like, where I've been and stuff like that. But it's about making beautiful whiskey. Milam Greene is setting out to be a legacy brand, a brand that endures and has really good quality product. It's about expertise, innovation. It's about trusting the people that make it. That's important to me. It's how I choose products as well, of course, behind the scenes. But really, at the end of the day, great price point. It should taste good.
Yeah. Well, if you need any other authors for next Unabridges, you might know others that are from here.
I love how we pitched ourselves and our products and services so unabashedly on the show.
Dude, okay, I know.
Just because we're big fans, though.
I know it took like a year and a half to make this happen. This was lovely. Thank you for being here. This was absolutely
Thank
delightful.
you.
I'm glad we didn't do this
super
on
fun.
Zoom.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Like I'm so glad that
It's
I'm
more
so
fun
glad
like
that,
this.
Yeah, so much.
And then we're
so
going to
much.
still edit together our visit down there and put that one out too,
our
because
chat with
that one's
Marlene,
a
which was amazing.
little overdue. But yeah, that one was great as well. So the fact that, and I like the fact that we got to have this conversation after we had got to go down and experience
with her.
Yeah,
She's amazing.
Yeah, it's been great.
Marlene is
cool.
awesome. I love Marlene. Yeah, she's awesome.
Good people.
Cool.
Heather, thank you so much for being here. This was awesome. Come back soon. Anytime you're in town and you just want to pop on and we just all shoot the shit, we can talk about other things. Just
Maybe
whatever
not
you
a
wanna
year
hang-
and a half from now.
Yeah.
Maybe
Right.
even sooner.
And also Marsha Milam. She should come on sometime.
Yes,
too.
absolutely.
She's great.
Oh my god,
God.
I would love to chat with Marsha and I. Go way
Yo,
back.
you
Oh,
need
really?
She's awesome on
We
a
go
podcast.
way back, indie rock concert producing.
Oh,
way
wow.
back.
Really?
I-
Way back.
well, guess
we worked
what?
together on the Fort
So-
Worth Music Festival.
So listen to this. Just one last thing. I will, because she's on the road now with her friend Ray Benson.
Oh, yeah,
who, Sleep at the Wheel.
Yeah.
He's up for a Grammy.
If y'all have ever
Which is
heard of
awesome.
Asleep at the Wheel,
yeah.
Yeah, and he's getting a Grammy.
Awesome.
Or
Wow.
up for a Grammy, I think it is.
Is it like a legacy one? Kind of like or did he win a?
I'm going to find out.
I bet it's a
have to
legacy
ask
one.
her,
If
but
she already
really-
knows, I bet it's a legacy.
But
That's cool.
I just think that a conversation with her about music and whiskey is, she just has great stories about it.
Yeah.
And about, I don't even want to tell you.
No,
but
100%.
they're so
Whenever she's
good.
like, absolutely. I love, even in the, and I haven't had an opportunity to do like a full on sit down conversation with her, but just even in passing, just kind of like, so where'd this come from? I mean, we've known each other
Well-
for a while, and like hearing her version
Exactly.
of
So
it's so
she-
great.
But
yeah.
her version is tied up in music and so is mine.
Yeah.
So, I used to be a professional musician. So she and I have a lot of connections there, but music and whiskey have a lot in common. Believe it or not.
100%.
Believe it or not. So she has great stories. I'm pitching her to be on this podcast too. You might as well just get it.
Why not?
Get it all. Do it all.
Yeah. Until we
100%.
interview everybody involved. We'll just continue to rotate everybody in.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. We have a fun team.
Yeah. So far, everything has been fantastic.
It's one of the best in Texas. Like the whole crew is just badass. I'm such a big fan of you guys. And like I said, thank you for bringing whiskey because I thought that I had Milam Greene. I thought just generally I try to save a little bit so that I have a little bit in case I need to do something with it with Texas whiskey.
Right.
I thought that I had Milam Greene at home, and all of a sudden I looked around and my wife drank all of it. She drank all of the Milam Greene I ever had. It's all gone, and I was like, "Oh crap! Hey Sharon, bring some bottles. I don't have any bottles. I need bottles." Yeah.
That's the best advertisement is I don't have it because it all got drank. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, then
Milam Greene does not last in our household.
well, if you're out there, go grab a bottle. Are you guys where like distribution wise? Are you just in Texas nationally? Like what's
We're nationally.
You
now.
are nationally.
So
Awesome.
in Texas, you can get us. You can get us in all your favorite retailers in Texas.
Awesome.
And across the U.S., many states you can get us online in many states.
Cool.
And I think we're up to about 17 states now.
Cool. So you can find a bottle of Milam Greene. Go out there and look. Heather, thank you so much
you.
for spending the time for us. We kicked off 2023. We're still here, Nico.
Solid. Let's do
We're
this.
solid.
Yeah, man.
Cool. And until next time,
Be real.
cheers, y'all. Are we being real or are we cheersing, y'all?
Cheers, y'all. Cheers, y'all.
Cheers, y'all.